We had a few technical difficulties while recording this episode of the podcast. As such, one of our speakers is occasionally muffled. For every episode, we provide a closed captioned version which is available on our YouTube channel, so you might want to go and watch this episode on YouTube where you can see the text transcribed for you as we speak. It's still an enjoyable episode, so please do listen in. Hello and welcome to the Scotland Singing for Health podcast, produced by Scotland Singing for Health Network. I am Brianna Robertson-Kirkland, and today I'm joined by three very special guests. Before I introduce them, let me tell you a little bit about this podcast and why we're talking about singing for health. Singing for Health groups support the management of a range of conditions such as respiratory conditions, dementia, Parkinson's disease, and mental health concerns. In each episode of the podcast, we'll be talking to singers, singing group leaders, researchers and medical practitioners to find out more about the benefits of singing and what Singing for Health activities are taking place all around Scotland. Today, our podcast focuses on singing for mental health, and we are joined by Kim Edgar, who is one of the musical directors for the Freedom of Mind Community Choir, GP and medical advisor Dr Veronica McBurnie, who founded Singing Health, and clinical psychologist Liesbeth Tip, who is also chair of the Harmony Choir and co-investigator for Scotland Singing for Health Network. Thank you all for joining me today. So mental health is something that I'm sure most of our listeners will have heard about, perhaps even thought about and discussed with fellow friends and families themselves. But I wonder if we can initially discuss the importance of mental health. So I'm going to throw this out to the group. What is mental health? Veronica.
I'm happy to speak. I was going to let everyone else have a word in edgeways. So, health is not merely the absence of disease. It's physical, mental and spiritual well-being. And mental health is just as an important part of your health as the physical part of your body and indeed the deeper parts of your thinking brain. So mental health covers a wide aspect of very obvious things, but can have very physical effects. You can't actually separate out one from the other. You can't say mental health is one thing and physical health is another, because it's all part of the same package. Mental health is something that was not discussed as openly as it is now, and I welcome all discussions that we have nowadays. There used to be far too much stigma discussing whether you were not coping or what was happening, or if you felt a little down, and people with mental health problems didn't want to talk about it. Mental health covers a wide range of things.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that insight, Veronica. Liesbeth, do you have any thoughts?
No, I think Veronica covered that really well. I think it's also important to point out, and I think you referred to that already, that, of course, everybody thinks when you talk about mental health about psychological symptoms and disorders. 1 in 4 will suffer from a disorder in their lifetime. So it is very common, but there's also positive mental health. And Veronica mentioned thriving, and the World Health Organization also recognizes that, like you mentioned, health is not just the absence of disease, but it's also about well-being. And in that sense, I think, singing for health and singing for mental health can really contribute to both sides of that concept of mental health.
Excellent. Veronica, medically speaking, if someone felt they needed professional help due to a decline in mental health, what might they do? Who might they go to?
Well, your first port of call, usually, if you have a health issue, is your GP. I realise we're living in extraordinary times. That's a phrase that's been used all too often. So out with meaning and family and friends and talking to people. I think the key thing is to talk about it and not to keep it to yourself. But what works for one doesn't always work for another. And I think once you've had a good look into the physical aspects of any problem that would lead to mental health problems, then the next step would be to tackle things on a psychological health level, and that involves a wide range of treatments. And really, one of the most important questions I ask my patients when I first meet them, actually, when I get to know them, is to ask them what brings you joy. Because whatever brings you joy in life will encourage you to grow, will encourage your spirit to grow, and will encourage you to thrive physically and mentally.
Excellent. That's really useful advice. And obviously today we are talking about singing for mental health, which could be something that some might find beneficial. So again, I'm just going to throw this out to the group. What could a Singing for Health group do for someone who feels like they need support to manage their mental health? What do these Singing for Health groups do? Kim?
Maybe I could jump in here.
Of course.
I think Singing for Health groups can really give people a sense of belonging. And I think it is well documented that loneliness can be, as bad as smoking 20 cigarettes a day for people. So I think that the sense of belonging that comes from joining a group and participating in shared activity on a weekly basis is something that shouldn't be underestimated. For me, anyway, with Freedom of Mind Community Choir, that's something I really think is at the forefront of what we're doing is creating a welcoming, safe space for people where they feel that they can be creative and thrive. I think also I found myself as a singer, when you're focusing in the moment on group singing, that can be a real relief from thinking about the past or the future. And I think sometimes that being in the moment is something that we can find difficult to do in these busy times when we're kind of bombarded with information. So I think the special focus that comes from learning new repertoire, for example, can really be a benefit to people. And I also find, and again, this is a personal experience, I'm quite a shy person. And I think that Singing for Health groups are very accessible for people who might not feel socially confident. You can come into a room and take part in a shared activity without having to be, really confident to put yourself forward or chat with people. You can literally get involved straight away.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much, Kim. Liesbeth?
Yes, I'm really glad to hear Kim say that. And I can say from a clinical psychology perspective, there has been evidence for all the points that she just made. For example, the sense of belonging has been researched under the concept of social identity. And it turns out that people that take part in choirs, their sense of belonging increases, and it even generalizes to other settings outside of the choir. And it also can happen in bigger choirs. And sense of belonging is very important for mental health. It is a basic human need. And then, Kim, your second point, can you remind me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think when you're concentrating on learning new music or remembering music as well, you're really in the moment.
There's research that, and actually I did some of that myself as well, that sense of flow is really important, for the positive well-being side of things. It also can help with distraction. When people with mental health difficulties tend to ruminate or worry a lot, exactly like you say. Actually, sense of flow, the part where people feel kind of submerged in the singing. And in the activity, it can increase over time. That is what we found with the Harmony Choir study, which was only 2 months. And there's recent research from students at the University of Edinburgh looked at sense of flow while singing online, and even there you can have that. And then your final point about people that are shy or a bit, I'm not sure how you phrased it, but withdrawn. There is a very good evidence-based therapy called cognitive behavioral therapy for people that don't feel comfortable around other people. And it shows that when you expose people to situations that are slightly out of their comfort zone, it can really help with how safe they feel. And as a choir can be such a safe space where people feel accepted and they all play their part in that kind of team effort. It can really help in that sense as well. Plus, of course, the mingling with new people that can also, habituate their anxieties from a clinical psychology perspective. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Liesbeth, for sharing the research work behind the benefits of singing for mental health. So, Veronica, you wanted to come in on this too?
Oh, of course, absolutely. Well, it's interesting, because they do think it's said that singing was the first noise we made for communicating with one another before we learned how to form words and vocabulary. And it's a really, it's the purest form of expressing ourselves, and it's the most natural thing. And if I've come across one person, I'll come across hundreds who've said, "Oh, I have a terrible voice." It's so full of judgment of self. And I think that being able to express your true self through singing without judgment is an incredible leap forward in our own sense of well-being.
Well, you can't get a bigger endorsement than that. So, Kim, you spoke a little bit about the Freedom of Mind group. Can you tell us a little bit about how a session with Freedom of Mind might look?
Certainly. Our sessions run on Wednesday afternoons in Tamfor Hill Community Hub in Falkirk, and they run from 2:30 till 4:30, and they're co-led by myself and Marriott Dallas. Before the pandemic, sessions included physical and vocal warm-ups, learning new repertoire, and singing requests from our existing repertoire. And we also had a social break in the middle for refreshments and a bit of a chat. These days, post-pandemic, we also incorporate some drumming and body percussion and a little bit of music theory, because currently, although we've gone back to indoor sessions, we are limiting the amount of time that we sing together in a room indoors, and we're making sure the hall is regularly ventilated. The choir operates on a pay what you can afford approach, and membership starts from £8 per month. And although everybody living in or near Falkirk is welcome to join us, we do prioritise membership applications from those who have lived experience of mental ill health. Before the pandemic, we used to do a lot of performances as well, and I think that was something that our members took great joy in, was kind of trying to spread joy through performance. And those performances were in a range of locations, from care homes, hospitals, to concert halls. And we haven't had any indoor performances, obviously, for a while, and we don't have any on the cards at the moment. But last week, we performed outdoors in the bucketing rain at the Peace Pole in Helix Park in Falkirk. And that was part of the pilgrimage for COP26. And I have to say, it was the most joyful thing to get back to performing for people. So there were pilgrims who'd been walking to COP26, and we were part of the welcome from Falkirk. And we had a good old dance and sing in the rain, which was really lovely.
Oh, well, that sounds really wonderful, especially after kind of a year of not a lot of public singing going on. So do you hope to do more kinds of activities like that in the future, Kim?
Absolutely. I mean, we appreciate that, again, as an activity for well-being, it's really great for our choir to have a project. And sometimes a performance can be like a project. It's something you rehearse for, you work towards, and then you experience success. And the lovely thing about performance, and I find this myself as a solo performer as well, is, it's a safe space. When you're on a stage and you're performing, people are there to enjoy and to support. And usually they clap at the end. So usually the whole performing experience is one which is, again, a really lovely communal experience to have in a variety of locations. So yes, absolutely. We do actually have a current project for a remote performance. So we've been asked to write a song for RASAC Perth around women's empowerment, and in solidarity with women to feel free to walk, for example, on their own in the evenings. So that's a song that we've just been writing in collaboration as a group. And in a couple of weeks, we'll make a video recording of our performance, and that's going to be broadcast at the event, which takes place in Perth. So we're doing little steps back towards performances at the moment, and thoroughly enjoying that.
Excellent. And you've been running online sessions as well, haven't you?
Yes. In fact, we moved all of our sessions online the week before the first lockdown, because we were conscious of the real health vulnerabilities of many members of our choir, and it felt like it was the safest thing to do. So what we did straight away back in March was we moved to making pre-recorded singing sessions and putting them on YouTube. Really, that was my first thought, because that was what I already knew how to do. I had never heard of Zoom before. So YouTube sessions is how we started off. And also we had quite a few members of the choir who didn't have internet access at home, but they did have YouTube on their television. So this was a way to kind of keep that sense of connection. However, quickly we realised that we were missing the social aspects of the choir, and then we got into Zoom and started running just chat sessions and turn sessions, a chance to share stories and jokes and songs online as a group. Again, we noticed very quickly that quite a lot of our members weren't able to access this without having devices, and we were really lucky. We applied for support from Connecting Scotland, and we were awarded 16 iPads to enable those choir members who couldn't get online to learn the skills. So quite a lot of our time actually over the past year, we've been doing digital skills sessions online and building up the confidence and skills of our choir members. That's just tapering off now. It feels like most people are feeling quite comfortable with accessing. We've now got a new website as well. So accessing resources online, both the YouTube sessions, which are continuing because we feel they're quite valuable. Also for people who might not just feel well enough to come to choir on a weekly basis, they can still keep that connection with the group and with our repertoire. So we're kind of having, I suppose, a not very high tech, but still a blended approach with in-person sessions and a YouTube video continuing.
Oh, that sounds like really ideal. I know that some of the conversations that we've been having in the network is how do we support blended sessions? How do we build up confidence for those who don't feel like they can engage with Zoom or engage with technology and singing in that way? So it's really encouraging to hear that you found a way forward.
I have to say it's testament to the choir members that they've been so up for learning and developing their skills. And it's just that other stepping into, Liesbeth, what you mentioned, going out with your comfort zone. Many of our choir members have gone well out with their comfort zone. And I know myself, I've been out with my comfort zone with technology. It's been a real learning curve for everyone. But because we're all in it together, we're also very lucky that we have a choir member who is a real technical genius. I think is not understating the case. He was previously employed in technology, and he's been like a digital ambassador for the choir, and he's been available to give detailed one-to-one support when it's required, which has been just fantastic for us.
Oh, wow, excellent. So, and really utilising the skills of those in the group. So, Liesbeth, I know that you also run Harmony Choir. Could you tell us a little bit about that group and what they do?
Yeah. I applied for funding as staff member of University of Edinburgh to run a choir research project to investigate the effects of singing in a choir on well-being and mental health, and also to see if people would meet in a choir, people from different mental health backgrounds, if that would change perceptions that people have from people with mental illness, so the negative stereotypes and the stigma around mental health. And we were funded by the Student Experience Grant. And we run 9 rehearsals, and we had a show at the Fringe Festival, and it showed that the stigma, some of the attitudes, negative attitudes towards mental health, had changed in the choir members. And I must add that it wasn't a therapy, it wasn't music therapy or anything like that, and we didn't necessarily bring it up at rehearsals. It was a community choir like any other choir. Supposed to just bring people together, get that process going for bonding and sense of community. And of course, I had confidentiality. So I knew people's backgrounds to make sure that there was a mix of different mental health backgrounds in the choir, reflecting the general population, but others didn't know that necessarily unless they wanted to speak about that. And I think that was one of the most powerful things, because it doesn't matter. It is about the people that you sing with. And that you interact with. It was a really good experience and very exciting. A lot of people had never sung in a choir before, let alone being on stage at the Fringe. They were so enthusiastic that they didn't want to stop. So our musical director was asked to continue. And over 5 years later, we're still going. And we use our performances to, we also sang at the wards around Christmas and did caroling and we use all our events basically to raise awareness of mental health, even though compared to 5-6 years ago, it is much better. The stigma is less than it was. It's still good to keep normalizing it and raise money for mental health charities. And we have a show coming up now where we focus on the effects of racism on mental health, just because we were familiar with some of the people around us that were affected by that because of COVID. There was an increase in anti-Asian sentiment. So we're raising money for that purpose, for anti-racist charities. And we talk about how to be an active bystander and support people that are affected. But the subjects vary. Usually it's general mental health, but because it's such a broad area, it is really good to be able to highlight things and do some good while we're also enjoying ourselves doing that.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing, Liesbeth. And have you been continuing online as well throughout the pandemic?
Yes, we started quite soon, I think a couple of weeks after. I can't really recall now, but online Zoom rehearsals. It turned out really quickly that didn't work at all to sing in a synchronous way. So we used the recordings that we had from past performances to keep going. Also, we did learn new repertoire, and we did one event online last year. And actually, the event I just mentioned is also going to be online with other guest musicians. So we let people record at home and then made a video on Zoom to kind of patch that together. Or we had other videos related to that, and used Facebook live streaming to air the event. So we have been going, and I think at some point, because it is harder work, I think as well for the musical director to do online rehearsals, that we mixed it up a bit. So at some point we're working with schedules now that one time we do a music quiz, or we do a show and tell, or we had a strange object, or, just any kind of pop quiz. I also, and I can really recommend that, I made a map of Edinburgh, our city, and on GatherTown, which is an interactive platform that is sometimes used in teaching, where you can just walk around the map, and I put in videos of all the performances that we had done around Edinburgh. That is a recent activity that we did, which was really nice. And in GatherTown, it's different than Zoom. And then you can also kind of meet there and have small group conversations, which is harder to do when you use Zoom because of the function of breakout groups is different. So we try to mix it up and come up with new things. And we have been looking at some live rehearsals again, but we also have a population that might be a bit more vulnerable. So we're trying to be very careful and keep an eye on the developments. But the most important thing, I think, is to make sure there is still a choir once the pandemic is more in the background. So keep the community going, and we check in with people, even if they're not rehearsing. We have kind of dedicated people that were in contact with these people already to just, keep that contact going. So it's been good. It's been different. As I mentioned, there was some research from students at the University of Edinburgh that looks into online singing. And, I think everybody can relate to that, online singing is not the same, but it still has mental health or well-being benefits, even though the musical side may be different. And we hope to publish that in the near future as well.
Oh, excellent. And, hopefully when that comes out, then we'll link it below in the show notes. So both Liesbeth and Kim, you've spoken about the importance of this social aspect. So it's not just about accurate singing as a group together, but getting together and singing and belonging as part of that group, which seems to speak to both your groups and both your choirs and what you're trying to achieve. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Freedom of Mind is a non-audition community choir, and it was mentioned earlier, I think so many adults have had a bad experience at some point in their life being told that they can't sing. And I fundamentally disagree with that. I think singing is for all of us, and it's not about perfection, it's about joy. And we welcome everybody who wants to come and join us to sing. It's such a great experience, and why would you hold that back from anybody? I just don't understand it. So absolutely, I think the participation and the buzz that we all get from every performance is what makes it worthwhile.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kim. And Veronica, that obviously speaks to what you were saying in the beginning as well. Could you tell us a little bit about your Singing Health? Because I know that you're the founder of Singing Health.
Absolutely. Well, I completely agree with Liesbeth and Kim, and joy is a key word. And I've just changed the name of our singing groups to the Joyful Voices, because there's more of an identity with that than there is with calling yourself Singing Health. So
all of you have been really proactive in thinking about how you can get groups together, how to work through challenges and different issues, and even introducing research into your practice as well. If someone was wanting to start their own Singing for Mental Health group, or they're wanting to train in this area, do you have any recommendations of how they could start?
Actually, Sophie Boyd and myself and you and Irons have been, and a couple of other colleagues in the field, have been working on the development of a toolkit for mental health inclusive choirs. And that will be open access and will be published by the time this podcast comes out. So that should include a lot of tips on various areas to help keep things safe and what things to look out for. And it's based on research with choir members and choir leaders, as well as co-production with singing leaders.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Liesbeth. And we'll obviously put all of that information in the show notes too. Veronica, were you wanting to come in?
I was just smiling and acknowledging what Liesbeth was saying there. All you have to do is to love music and love people. And there are many, many resources available online to help you. But the basic principle is to welcome people in, to ask them what they want, and to start the journey together. And you'll see where it goes very, very quickly.
Oh, wow, excellent. Thank you so much, Veronica. Kim, did you want to come in on this as well?
Yes, only to say that resource sounds fantastic, and I'll greatly enjoy looking into that myself. With Freedom of Mind, we actually grew out of a mental health association. It was a project inside the mental health association. So I've very much come to this as a lay person and don't feel super qualified to make recommendations around, developing a choir specifically for mental health. But I have to say, for us, we grew out of FADAM organisation and we were a project there. FADAM kind of changed its focus and didn't want to provide weekly sessions any longer. But at that point, we consulted with the choir, and everybody in the choir wanted to keep going, as did Mariette and myself. So that was our motivation for keeping going. And I think for us, what has been helpful has been to link in with various networks. So like this network, but also there are networks of choir leaders within Scotland, which are very welcoming and supportive. It's great to know that we can signpost people back to FADAM for specific needs. And to elsewhere. So that's something we're really conscious of, is that Mariette and myself are not experts, but we are able to point people in the right direction when they maybe need a bit more support. So I think, again, I'd second everything that's been said in terms of go for it. If you're thinking about doing this, then you've got the potential to make a real difference to people's lives. So go for it. Don't be shy and reach out for help, because I feel like we're in communities of singers and people working in the areas of health who all want to support each other for the greater good. So it's not that people won't be around to support you on your journey.
Excellent. Really good advice from all of you. So thank you so much for that. So I guess a question that I have is, how do group members come to you? Do you get a sense of how they find out about your groups and then come to a session? Kim?
Word of mouth is, I think, the most natural way, and we have quite a few members of the choir who've brought along relatives and friends after they've experienced the benefits themselves from group singing. I have to say that with funding support from Creative Scotland this year to keep us going through and beyond the pandemic, hopefully, we have made a new website, which is freedomofmindcommunitychoir.com, and we've put a big massive button on it which says join us, and that's actually been quite effective. Combined with having the website and this welcome to say people are welcome to join who might just come across us randomly. We've also done a couple of Facebook campaigns just saying we welcome new members. And we've been inundated with requests, which is fantastic. So for the first time ever during the pandemic, we've now got a waiting list for membership. But we'd love to welcome more members who are living in or near Falkirk. So if anyone's thinking about it, you'd be so welcome. Just get in touch with us through the website.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kim. And we'll link that information as well in the show notes. Liesbeth?
I think for Harmony Choir, it also very much is the same way. But in addition, we always try to seek publicity, and that was from the start, because of course it was a research project. So we needed to get a lot of people together quite quickly in the space of 2 months. So we used University Press Office, and we got some media exposure, and we still try to do that, because one of the messages of this project was to normalize mental health. So you want to have that message out there. And I must add, by the way, that I had this idea to bring people together from different mental health backgrounds outside of a research project initially, but the choir I was in, it was hard to organize that. So that is when I thought, okay, then I have to do it in a different way, because I think it's a good idea. And then I thought, oh, well, I work in research at the university, so I might as well make it into a research project and find some funding. And there's quite a lot of research going on in the last couple of years, singing research. So that is definitely a way, if you can't find enough volunteers, to attract some funding to set something up. But yeah, we still do that because it's so important to normalize mental health, and even in bigger media outlets or smaller, like Positive News. I think somebody found us via that. And the good thing is when you have that message, that people come sometimes to the choir mentioning, oh, I have mental health difficulties, and I saw this choir and it sounded like a very welcoming place. So it does help, I think, to add that, to attract people that may otherwise have missed out because they were a bit hesitant. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Liesbeth. So we also are developing, as part of the Scotland Singing for Health network, we're trying to create a resource that will make singing for health groups more visible. So throughout our project, we are building an interactive online map where people will be able to see if there are any singing for health groups in their area, and will be able to find out when the group typically meets. Now that map will not be ready until 2022. But in the meantime, we've got some really excellent resources that have been suggested here in this podcast, and we'll link those all below. So we're coming to the end of our discussion here. And I just want to ask, so that we don't miss anything, is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't discussed yet? Liesbeth.
Veronica was talking so enthusiastically about rehearsals and the immediate effects this can have. We actually measured that in a Harmony Choir project over 9 weeks. Before and after rehearsals, we asked people about their enjoyment, well-being and connectedness on a scale from 0 to 10, and they could rate that. And it turns out that except for the first rehearsal, with all the other rehearsals, before and after was a statistically significant difference, an improvement in all of them. So enjoyment, well-being, and connectedness. And I also looked at to see if people from different mental health backgrounds actually could benefit less, and that was not the case except for the first rehearsal. Like I said, so people that had symptoms in the past or present or a diagnosis didn't benefit as much as people that generally didn't have any mental health symptoms. But that was only for the first rehearsal. So it could be that, it might be a bit more stressful for people that already may struggle with some issues. But in the end, everybody can benefit. And it was not only after every rehearsal, but also over the space of 2 months that there was a statistically significant difference. And for flow, I didn't measure flow before and after rehearsals, but only after rehearsals. But that also went up over time, and that was only in the space of 9 weeks.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that, Liesbeth. And can we link that research below?
It hasn't been published yet because I've been very busy with my part-time PhD and job, but I'm happy to share any results, and we've presented at several conferences as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Liesbeth. Veronica.
Well, I would just like to say that I think singing is not only beneficial for mental health, I think it's actually essential. And I would like to see singing on prescription. I did write, I was interviewed for the Big Issue in 2019, and I have been lobbying various members of Parliament, and I would really like to see singing on prescription.
Thank you so much, Veronica. And obviously part of the aim of this network is that we're developing the map so that it's easier for everyone, whether they're in the medical community, whether they're out in the everyday community, or whether they're singing practitioners or singers, can see what groups are nearby and go along to a session if they desire to do so.
It's a wonderful, wonderful plan. Well done.
Thank you. And Kim, do you have anything that you're wanting to add here?
Only to say it's a real pleasure to be part of the Scotland Singing for Health network, and it feels like a really positive step in the right direction. I completely agree with what Veronica's saying, that singing is essential, and group singing in particular can just bring so many benefits to so many people. I've seen it in a range of contexts, from, for example, an under-21s choir in Cornton Vale Women's Prison. And I know I'm not a researcher, but we did our own analysis. And Liesbeth, exactly what you're saying about measuring feelings before and after every rehearsal. We saw improvements for every participant every time. It's so obvious that it should be something that could be prescribed, because it's so clearly beneficial for people. And I think if we could just broaden our thinking and keep moving in this direction, it feels very positive, and I hope that the movement can build momentum.
I couldn't agree more with what Veronica and Kim just have said, and I'm all in favor of social prescription, which is why I so much wanted to help build the evidence for that. And which is why research is so important. And that is also something that the Scotland Singing for Help Network can do, just bring research in contact with professionals and singers. And it's just a really good mix. And as a clinical psychologist, in my therapies with people, I always recommend to look for things that make them happy. And I think Veronica mentioned something similarly. And singing is one of those things. So I think my mission would also be to promote the message of singing for mental health, and because I'm in psychology, of course, also singing for health within my field of expertise, because I think it is underrated too much so far. And that it would be great if it was more known to not just general practitioners, but also mental health practitioners, that they could refer people to a Singing for Health group.
Thank you all so much for joining me today and for having such an inspiring conversation. Thank you all for joining us today. Next week, we are joined by Carol Miller and Katie Warren, and we will be discussing singing for supporting those with cancer. Thanks for listening. This podcast is produced by Scotland's Singing for Health Network, a project hosted at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland, funded by the Royal Society of Edinburgh, and in partnership with the University of Edinburgh. For more information on our activities, please visit our website. Details are in the show notes.